Okay, so let's unpack this. Have you ever noticed that, well, as the years go by, being around people maybe just doesn't feel quite the same as it once did?
Mm.
You might find yourself, quietly stepping back a bit from social circles you once really cherished.
Yeah.
And if that question hits home for you, you are definitely not alone. This isn't really about becoming cold or bitter or anything like that.
No, not at all.
But the truth, as we're hoping to discover in this deep dive, actually runs, well, far deeper.
It's truly striking, actually, how many older adults, we're talking people in their 60s, 70s, even beyond, are experiencing this exact shift.
Right.
So our mission today really is to explore cis, powerful, and maybe often unspoken reasons why many individuals start to pull away from others as they age.
And these aren't just like cliches, are they?
No, not just common observations. They feel more like these quiet truths, drawn from real stories, real lives, and a kind of deeper emotional wisdom.
Okay, so let's start with the first one. When we talk about aging, we often focus on what we gain, like wisdom, perspective, but we also accumulate something maybe less talked about, wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Some are like arguments that faded years ago. But others run much deeper, like dismissals or betrayals or just emotional letdowns when you least expect it.
Right. Those stick with you.
And here's where I found that it gets really interesting in the research. As we grow older, those echoes, those past hurts, they can actually grow louder sometimes.
Yeah.
You might find yourself not opening up quite as easily, not really from resentment necessarily, but more because you sort of learn to protect your peace.
That's such a crucial point. It really is a kind of wisdom that comes directly from experience, doesn't it?
It feels like it.
You've sort of earned the right, in a way, to guard your emotional energy, to be more discerning about where you put it. Psychologists actually talk about something called socio-emotional selectivity theory,
Okay.
which basically suggests that as our time horizons seem shorter, older adults tend to prioritize the really meaningful, emotionally gratifying relationships and experiences, a natural shift.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah. Exactly. Quality over quantity in social stuff. It really makes you wonder, what does it mean to truly value your own company, your own peace, like gold, after you've lived through enough of those quiet disappointments?
Absolutely. And it brings to mind someone like Chloe. She's 81. She used to host these vibrant Sunday dinners, right?
Yeah.
Her house just alive with laughter and stories.
Mm.
But over time, friends drifted. One betrayed her trust quite badly. Another just vanished after her husband died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't one single massive heartbreak, but more like a slow erosion of that connection.
Yeah, the cumulative effect.
Right, and now she really cherishes her solitude. But it's not from bitterness, it's more from this clarity about what actually nurtures her now. It's not really a retreat, but maybe a thoughtful reallocation of her, precious emotional resources.
That makes perfect sense.
And building on that idea of guarding your peace, your energy, it seems like many older adults also develop a significantly lower tolerance for what feels like empty conversation.
Oh, definitely.
When you're younger, small talk is often just harmless. Social lubrication, maybe.
Sure gets you through.
But later in life, it can feel genuinely, almost physically unbearable sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You reach a point where discussing the weather again or gossip, it just doesn't cut it.
No.
You crave something real, something with substance.
Mm-hmm.
And what used to feel awkward, like silence, suddenly becomes sacred.
Precisely. And that isn't isolation, is it? It's actually very conscious. It's intention. When your emotional energy feels more finite, maybe more limited, you start guarding it like it's treasure.
Yeah.
You begin choosing presence over just performing socially, depth over just noise. It really makes you think, if a conversation lacks heart, if it doesn't truly connect you, why force it?
Right. Why go through the motions?
Exactly.
Right.
This isn't about disliking people at all. It's much more about valuing authenticity, real connection.
Yeah, I came across the story of Henry, and he's a 76-year-old former salesman. And apparently he once absolutely thrived in crowds, always the life of the party. Now, he often skips the loud family gatherings unless he feels truly, in the right headspace for it.
Mm-hmm.
As he puts it, he said, "I'm done talking just to fill the air."
Wow, straight to the point.
Yeah. "I'd rather be at home with a good book and a warm drink." It's just his clear preference for genuine connection, or maybe none at all, rather than forcing it.
That resonates.
And then there's this other quite profound feeling that can emerge too, this sense that people just don't get you anymore.
Oof. Yeah, that's a tough one.
At some point, it can feel like the world just speeds up and kind of leaves you behind a bit. The language changes, the cultural values shift, the whole pace of life, it's all different, sometimes dramatically so.
Mm.
And you might start to feel a bit invisible, even when you're in a room full of people, maybe even family.
Yeah.
So what does that kind of disconnect, that feeling of invisibility, what does that mean for your willingness to really engage, to put yourself out there?
Well, this brings up such a crucial point about our fundamental human needs, right? We all have this deep need to be heard, to be understood, and crucially, to feel validated.
Right. To feel seen.
Exactly. And when your feelings or your experiences, your stories are dismissed, not always with cruelty, sometimes it's just silence or being quickly glossed over.
Yeah, the quick nod and subject change.
Precisely. Psychologists actually have a term for that. They call it emotional invalidation.
Oh.
It basically signals that your lived experience isn't valid or maybe not worthy of attention in that moment, and that silence or that glossing over, it can be deafening.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it leads, quite naturally, to a form of self-preservation where you stop offering those pieces of yourself up. Why would you?
That perfectly describes Ella's situation. She's 79, a retired school teacher, got 5 kids, a whole lifetime of stories and wisdom she'd love to share. But when she speaks, especially maybe to the younger generations in her family, they often barely listen. They nod or they're scrolling their phones.
Phone scroll.
Yeah. Or they just change the subject. And like you said, it's probably not malice. It's just this profound disconnect.
Yeah. A gap in understanding, maybe?
Right. And eventually you just stop offering those parts of yourself when it feels like they just fall on deaf ears,
Understandably so.
Okay, moving on. Another thing. With age, a quieter fear can emerge for a lot of people. It's not necessarily about illness or even death itself, but about becoming too much.
Ah, yes, the fear of being a burden.
Exactly. That you might hesitate to call or to ask for help when you need it, or even just to say what you really need in that moment. And it's often not about pride, is it? It seems more about respecting what you see as their busy lives, trying not to impose.
It's such an intriguing aspect of human connection, isn't it? Because as you say, it's rarely about pride. It isn't a sign of weakness at all. In fact, it's often love in disguise. It's this profound act of caring for others by trying really hard not to inconvenience them.
That's a really interesting way to frame it. Love in disguise.
But, it's also vital to remember the flip side, the counterpoint, which is the truth, that you are genuinely never a burden to those who truly love you. They want to show up for you. They want to be there. The challenge often is for the older adult to actually accept that outpouring of care, to believe it's offered freely.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
It makes me think of Herbert. He's 84. He used to spend every single weekend with his daughter's family. It was like the highlight of his week.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah. But as his mobility declined, he started saying no more often to invitations.
Okay.
Not because he didn't want to go. He absolutely did.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to disrupt their routine. He kept saying things like, oh, they've got the kids, their jobs, I'd just slow them down.
Trying to protect them.
Exactly. He was trying to protect them, but maybe, possibly, at his own expense, at the cost of his own connection.
That's a delicate balance, isn't it?
It really is. And sometimes this pulling away isn't even about specific hurts or those fears we just talked about. Sometimes it's a much more gradual, almost imperceptible process.
Yeah. Just the quiet fading of old relationships. Some friendships, they don't end with a big dramatic blowout or argument.
No big rupture.
No, they just kind of dissolve.
Yeah.
Like one missed lunch turns into 2, then suddenly months have passed. There's no drama, just this quiet drift.
It's incredibly common and often a very natural process.
Yeah.
If we think about it from a broader perspective, relationships that were built around shared life seasons,
Yeah.
Like raising kids together or working in the same place or being close neighbors.
Right, circumstantial connections.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those often naturally diminish once that particular season ends. Researchers sometimes even talk about friendship decay or the situational nature of bonds.
Friendship decay.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, is that okay? Is it okay for things to just fade? And often the answer is, well, yes. Sometimes that space is simply what growth looks like.
Letting go gracefully.
Kind of. You start to choose more intentionally who truly gets your energy now, who you genuinely resonate with in this season of your life. Yeah, like Victoria, she's 73. She and her best friend used to walk together every single Thursday. It was like a decades-long ritual for them.
Wow.
But life moved on.
Yeah.
Their interests diverged a bit, and eventually those walks just stopped.
Just fizzled out.
Yeah. And Victoria shared, she said, "We still care about each other deeply, but I think we've simply said all we had to say that truly connected us."
And acceptance.
Right. You sort of honor the history, the friendship that was, and you move on if that connection doesn't genuinely nourish you anymore.
That requires a certain wisdom, too.
It does. Okay, so here's where this whole conversation maybe takes a truly surprising turn, and perhaps points to the most unexpected reason of all for pulling back.
Okay.
Solitude starts to feel like home.
Yes.
And it's not because you've given up on people, not at all. It's because you finally found this profound peace within yourself.
That's beautifully put. And it's so important to distinguish this from loneliness, isn't it? This isn't loneliness at all. It's more like a form of healing, a quiet kind of self-actualization, maybe.
Yeah.
When you look at this from the bigger picture, it feels like a journey towards profound wisdom and really deep contentment. You stop chasing all the external noise. You stop needing that external validation so much. And instead, you discover this genuine, authentic joy in your own rhythm, your own silence, the rich landscape of your own thoughts and memories.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful shift, actually, in where you find your deepest sense of fulfillment.
Exactly. Think about James. He's 82. He once apparently loved being the life of the party, always surrounded by people, center of attention.
Okay.
Now, he says he's happiest just sitting on his porch, maybe watching the birds or tending to a small garden.
Contentment.
Yeah, he just smiles and says something like, "I've got enough good memories to keep me company now and these new moments of peace to appreciate." It's not a retreat from the world. It really feels like a quiet awakening.
A discovery of inner richness.
Yeah, a quiet awakening to a different, very personal kind of joy. So, wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you listening right now? Which of these reasons perhaps resonated most with your own story, or maybe someone you know?
Yeah.
Was it the burden of those past betrayals, that longing for peace over just idle chatter, maybe the sense that people don't quite get you anymore, or that quiet fear of being a burden?
Or the fading relationships.
Yeah, the quiet fading of old relationships, or maybe that unexpected, surprising joy of simply being on your own.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? And maybe the key takeaway is this. No matter what you're experiencing, remember this. You're not necessarily breaking down.
Right.
In many ways, you might actually be breaking through to a new understanding of yourself, your needs, what really matters to you now.
That's a great way to put it, breaking through.
You're not necessarily isolating in a negative way. Maybe you're awakening to a deeper truth about where your true peace and fulfillment actually lie.
Yeah. We really hope this deep dive just reminded you that just because you've chosen more space, or maybe more quiet, or perhaps different kinds of connections, it absolutely doesn't mean you're truly alone.
Not at all.
We're right here with you, exploring the beautiful and constantly evolving complexity of growing older.